thank you all for having me. Thank you for MSU. And this is I've been given a assignment to give 50 years of redistricting in 15 minutes. Strap yourself in. I'm going to cover everything. But I really decided the best thing to do, because this is a general discussion, cover some anecdotes on the history of Michigan drawing districts and some of the challenging rules, politics, and so on, and judicial rulings have been part of the process. Every 10 years, we get a whole new group of people, almost always some new set of rules. Somebody has brought a lawsuit or won an election. So it's in the 50 or so years I've been around, I think my first reapportionment was, oh, that's not mine. So there have been a lot of changes. And we started out with the Constitution. There have been two constitutions in the last 100 years: the 1908 Constitution and the new Constitution of 1963. And old people like me still talk about the new Constitution. We've had it 50 years practically. So you look at those two, and the 1908 Constitution was when Michigan was a simpler state. It actually tried to put the districts into the Constitution by listing counties and so on, for the Senate at least. The new Constitution was one of George Romney's major blunders, in my view. He was sort of the guy behind this, the promoter of CONCON, Constitutional Convention, and they adopted this reapportionment commission. And he truly believed it would work. Each party would name members, they would get together, they had rules, and they would come to an agreement. Well, they never did. It's never worked. We have never used the reapportionment commission to draw the lines in Michigan. So we've gone 50 years without, and it's never been changed. So the language in our Constitution is merely says 110 representatives and 38 senators. Really doesn't have much else to do with the process. So the interesting thing about CONCON, how that was, if those of you who were around then, it took 3 separate elections to get the Constitutional Convention done. They had to call a convention, and then they had an election to elect the representatives in CONCON. 1 representative per Senate seat, 1 per House seat. And then, when CONCON proposed a new Constitution, we had to vote on that too. The Republicans won the election of delegates, 2-1. So you had a 2-1 Republican majority at that time, which came up with this bipartisan commission model. I worked on all 3 of them, and I was chair of the MSU Students for CONCON, promoting it. And I said that confirmed my reputation on campus as a total political geek. Anybody that would think that's a leadership position on campus. So I've been around this for a long time. One thing about that was really wrong, as it turned out, with the commission rules, as I think the Democrats said, they counted pine trees as well as people. There was a provision that you, like on a 4-to-1 basis, you used the number of the area and not just the people. And that was designed to help the more rural, spread out Republicans. And so that's in there. It's never been applied. But I kind of looked at all the different ways we've done it and the different languages of the constitutions. and elsewhere. And there are some pretty regular kinds of principles that have bipartisan support generally. This is some of the language we've used at different times. Districts that are compact, convenient, and contiguous by land, as rectangular in shape as possible. That frequently comes up. There's a kind of a belief that the most non-gerrymandered district would be a nice square with a certain number of people in it. We said that, interesting, one of the existing senatorial districts at the time of the reapportionment shall not be altered unless there is a failure to comply with the above standards. So there was an effort to, insofar as you possibly could, to lock in the existing districts. This is a part of the April standards. Districts shall follow incorporated city or township or boundary lines to the extent possible and shall be compact. That's a little bit different than the requirement of a triangular in shape, but there was I think there has been a general belief that if you have a district that incorporates local boundaries, you'll have a better district in the sense that the state representative will know he represents or she represents, this city, that township, and so on. Our new this election for the state senator here in replacing Senator Jones, it has one little piece of it that drops down and gives them 4 townships in Hingham County. And so it kind of goes up around Lansing. So, but you still nevertheless use it. You use the township lines and the county lines and so on, if you can. On the other hand, the other competing interest that the Constitution requires, single-member districts are apportioned on a basis of population. Districts shall be, so let's say you start with equal population. I believe we did that in the congressional races one period. They could get down, as computer power came up, they could get down and they could move the line a block and pick up 15 more voters to get equal numbers. Now, all those techniques that were used in the past to draw lines are now used in every election by every party to try to identify their voters and where they're located. Each county has a here was one of them. Each county that has a population of not less than 0.7% gets a House district. Well, there's 110 districts, and they try to use kind of a formula to pick the first bunch of them, and then they reallocate them after that. And another phrase we use in the Constitution, population of such districts shall be nearly as equal as possible, but not less than 75%, nor more than 125% of the number determined by dividing blah, blah, blah. Formula. That is the deviation. That's a big deviation between 75 and 125. There was some of the earlier cases I remember because when I was involved, it was like 16% deviation. Other people would say, no, it has to be 0 deviation. And you get some interesting districts. If your equality of numbers per district is the primary goal, you can do that. Now, you get equal numbers of people in a district. Now, what I don't know is if that includes prisoners in Ionia that can't vote. Because they may have an extra representative or two. So some are the issues that one way or another we're going to have to deal with. They shape compactness and contiguousness. Preservation of existing districts, is that going to be a value in the process? Following or city or township lines, another subcategory. County as an organizing unit. And there are some arguments against that because, you know, counties were formed when the state was formed. They're kind of a backwards. Why should we recognize counties? Except that county people live in counties and their politics are in counties, county commissioners and so on. And then the deviation issue. So those are the elements that historically have been discussed and in various ways. And I'll just give you a few examples where I've seen some of these things going on. And the main point is redistricting is a political act. It is the inherent, it's a critical part of our democratic system. It's in the U.S. Constitution to require a decennial census, and over the years we have slowly at the federal level moved to give Indians citizenship rights. They didn't have them before. We obviously fought the Civil War and give all former slaves the citizenship rights. So the idea of redistricting is a critical political decision. And my own view is a lot of these legal decisions on reapportionment are just political decisions wrapped up with a lot of fancy liberal or legal gobbledygook that I'm very good at. And so is Mark Brewer, and so are some other people. But it still is a political decision. There is no court, 3-member federal court, state Supreme Court, doesn't act with a clear understanding of the political nature of what they're doing. Interesting point that people don't realize, one time getting the computer services to help draft maps was a big deal. But it was also very expensive because you had to use mainframe computers. And so the legislature, bipartisan, decided to fund both parties. And I thought that was a smart thing. We recognized that was a service that was now going to be important. Of course, nowadays, I think you can do your reapportionment maps on your iPhone if you want. Their computer power is a lot cheaper and a lot more ubiquitous. We'll probably get into this maybe, I hope, at least I have one conclusion. There is no such thing as nonpartisan reapportionment. My good friend Walt Sort tried to call me one day, asked me if I wanted to participate in a nonpartisan ballot campaign. Those don't exist. It's a partisan legislature. The Constitution provides for parties. So each major party is now developing their own strategies on how to deal with it. The Democrats have laid their money on the ballot proposal, the quote nonpartisan ballot proposal. And the Republicans, I'm sure, will have their own strategies. Republican parties previously been quite, they benefited by some court decisions. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why a Republican majority or a Democratic majority on the state Supreme Court has been quite important. And it may be one of the reasons why the costs of Supreme Court cases have gone up and there's much more partisan involvement in them because of the consequences, really, of that one decision every 10 years, reapportionment. The Democratic Party uses, I claim, and I can hear others boo me, use front groups like the League of Women Voters and everything to show it, to make it appear that they're supporting something that's not directly to their benefit. I found an interesting concept in this proposal we're going to hear about. the term community of interest. Now, that has no definition. It means whatever 8 people think, I guess, or 13, or however many there was on the committee. One anecdote I want to tell you about how important this is. In 1982, Jim Blanchard was elected, and the Democrats controlled the House. In 1983, the legislature started meeting. But the Republicans started am I done? Okay, I'll finish this step. The Republicans started an effort to recall state senators. And they won those elections. But it hadn't yet been announced. So the Democrat legislature met, they took a second house election code bill, if you know the legislature, and they stripped out everything in it and put in a reapportionment plan. And thought they had achieved this brilliant scheme. If I'd been asked to do it, I would have done it right. But they screwed it up, and they forgot. They just had a blank bill, and that's against the Constitution. And so they lost. So there's those kinds of things, and I have 2 or 3 more, but I won't go through them. But we're getting into that again, and that's probably why you're all here. So thank you for your time.